Good evening and welcome to Life Ahead right here on PBS Fort Wayne. The name of our show is Life Ahead. There's a reason for that. We try to give you education and information on different topics, a different one every week, to help you when you have to make choices for your life ahead. Well, tonight our topic's going to be funerals, but that's a choice a lot of people have to make, whether it's you making plans for your parents or your grandparents, or, and this is one of the things we're really going to get into tonight, pre-planning your own funeral. That's certainly a big trend, if you will, right now, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. And I have two gentlemen here with me tonight to talk about that and to answer your questions. The phone number, 969-2720, is appearing on the bottom of the screen. That'll be there periodically through the show. And you can give us a call anytime with any questions you have. Our phone operator will be right there to take your question. If you'd like to talk to us live on the air, I bet these guys would like that. That way, if they have a question back, you're right there on the phone. Otherwise, you can give the phone operator your question, and she'll type it up and send it out here to me in the studio. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Sure.
We don't have any other rules. We're pretty easygoing here on Life Ahead.
We like that.
Okay, all right. First of all, I'd like for you to meet Casey Miller. Casey is an executive director of Divine Mercy here in the Fort Wayne area, and they have some new things to talk about. And Nate Hoeffel is, am I saying that right? It's not
close enough.
Hoeffel? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, close enough. Okay, yeah. Nate, we'll just call you Nate
That's
tonight.
Good.
Nate handles a lot of the pre-planning. He's the manager of that area. And I said that I think that pre-planning is becoming a pretty popular trend, if you will. Would you say that's right, Casey?
Absolutely it is, and I'll let Nate speak to that as well, but there's so much relief that comes to the family when somebody has pre-planned their funeral with us or another funeral home. It doesn't matter. But taking control of one's decision-making and removing that burden from other family members or a spouse is huge. It really is. Nate, if you'd like to speak a little
Nate,
more to that.
jump in, because now you would meet with somebody that wanted to pre-plan their own funeral or somebody in their family?
Yeah, typically the role that I have or that I've had throughout my career has been meeting with families to help them, you know, just iron out kind of all the rough spots, get them information about what's involved, have them have the ability to do, you know, their question and answer sessions with me about, you know, what's involved. What do I need to be prepared for? What do I need to make sure my kids know? What do I need to make sure that I have in here? And then really just, it's like a roadmap, really, for a time when one family member is not going to be there, you know, to give advice. And typically, we're talking about maybe parents making arrangements, of course, and then their children having to come in and at the time of death. And then at that time, what we can do is, again, we lay out all of the instructions that that family member has left for them. So in other words, it really helps them focus on the task at hand. And one of the things that we say a lot is when someone passes away, it's really a time for people to slow down and not speed through this event. And so when things are done ahead of time, as opposed to if somebody has an unexpected death in their family and they have to come in and start from scratch.
And do everything. Make all the decisions.
Yeah, they can, it basically is, they come in, the family comes in, and we show them the gift that's been left by their family member. And it is a gift. Because,
I like that.
Yeah.
It is a gift that you're giving to your family.
It's a gift that might be a little hard to talk about, you know. When,
and that's why we're talking about it tonight.
You bet.
Because, you know, I'm sure that maybe many of you feel the same way, that it's kind of a touchy topic, and people, whether it's talking about funeral planning or estate planning or so many topics, even health, they don't want to talk about because it means facing mortality.
Well, you know, Sandy, I would add to that when people come in to our funeral home and make these arrangements, the professionalism of the people that they're going to meet with, they make the process so easy.
Yeah.
And it's
so that
explained.
It's not awkward.
And what we do
decisions.
is we document everything that is discussed, so that when the family needs our help at Divine Mercy, we know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
It's all been written down, it's been inscribed, the selections have been made and pre-funded. So,
Okay, so that's the typical thing that a person would make their choices of what they want for their funeral or their
Yes.
spouses or whatever, and go ahead and pay for that package beforehand.
exactly, and the whole point being so that when the family needs our help, everything's been taken care of financially, and it's not a burden to the family.
Okay, what happens, and Casey, I'll ask you this. What happens if, say, Dad has visited with Nate and made all of his plans or his preferences and paid for everything, but he doesn't pass away for 4 or 5 more years? Meanwhile, choices have changed. The financial planning has changed. Do you have to pay more?
No, that's the beauty of it. If that person lives 20 more years, we will not ask that family for more money. So you lock in the prices at that particular time once you make those choices. And that's why we encourage families to prepay, because you lock it in. As prices go up in the future, you're no longer affected
And they
by it.
probably will. I mean, what doesn't?
Correct.
know? Well, what about the funeral home itself? What if you have made these arrangements through some funeral home and pre-planned everything and paid for it in advance, but then that funeral home closes for one reason or other? What happens, Nate?
Well, if it's been a properly executed and properly set up burial trust or prepaid funeral,
Yeah.
one of the nice things about the way those are set up is that they're totally transferable, which just means that the money or that funeral goes where you go. And that's one of the things that has to be part of that for it to be properly executed, is they have to have the ability. We don't hold the money, so it's held
Is it
by
like
a
in
third
a
party.
trust or
It
something?
is.
Yeah,
Okay.
It
yeah,
is,
and so
yes.
the beauty of that is, regardless of what happens to the funeral home that you set things up with, if you change your mind down the road and your kids have moved away and
Yeah.
it comes to that point in your life where all the kids and the grandkids are somewhere else, and they're on the phone and they say, hey, we would like you guys to come here. That goes with you to wherever you go. Your wishes go, all of it goes with you.
Whether it's in Indiana or another
yeah,
state?
it
That is
doesn't matter
correct.
where it is.
Well, that's wonderful. Or whether you're there or,
Right.
or not there anymore.
And it's really set up that way so people have choices, so that they're not tied into one entity if they prefer not to be there at some point in time.
What if you want to make changes to that package?
Mm-hmm.
If
do
you
that.
want different music or,
Oh,
or
yeah,
different things,
yeah.
can you still do that?
For sure.
What we encourage families to do once they've made these arrangements, secured everything, is to revisit it every 5 years, just to
Oh,
make
that's a
sure
good
that
idea.
if there's been any changes, maybe more grandchildren have been added to the family, this kind of thing, we can update our records. So it's very easy to do.
Do people normally make all their choices when they come and say
Yeah, we-
have a sit-down
Yes.
meeting?
We
with you,
try
Nate?
to, I always tell the family what we're going to do today is we're going to sit down and we're going to go through this as if you were going to need it tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And so,
Right.
because there are a lot of times families are like, well, I don't know what I want to do with this, or I don't know what I want to do about that. So
Yeah.
really the most effective way for us to be able to help a family is to say, well, let's pretend, or what if death had occurred yesterday for one of you, what would you be doing today and what decisions would you make? The big difference is when they're there together doing it, they get to bounce these things off of each other, as
Sure.
opposed to if death had occurred, there's only one person there maybe making all those arrangements. So we really do it in a way or in a fashion so that, we try to create some urgency and help them, solidify the decisions based on today. And to your point, if things change, luckily, they have 10 or 20 years to think through those things. And if it wasn't perfect, or it's not perfect for them anymore, then there's
Yeah.
certainly things they can change.
Okay, all right. So you're covering
Yeah.
all possibilities.
You
of
try
it.
to. Yeah.
You know what? We have some beautiful pictures of Divine Mercy that I want to share with all of you. We'll just let those photographs go on throughout our conversation here, just to give you a feeling of what we're looking at here. Okay, this is the Divine Mercy.
This is the nativity scene that we had commissioned an artist by the name of Chris Body and his studio to create for the cemetery, for Catholic Cemetery. And it's located just adjacent to the entry of the funeral home, and it creates a really peaceful setting of the Holy Family during the Christmas season. We place that during November, December, and January. what you're seeing right now are columbaria for those families that prefer cremation.
Yeah, and I want to get into cremation too. Is that something people pre-plan, Nate?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't matter what your wishes are, ground burial or cremation's just, the word's going to sound a little funny, but disposition. So it's in other words, instead of being put into the ground, full body casket, cremation is an alternative to that. So where we would have the cremated body, and then that would be either put into a columbarium above ground or a niche space, or buried in the ground, just as a full body would be, but just in the cremated form.
Is it often that people choose to take the cremated remains with them?
Sometimes, yeah, but typically,
I mean, there's always that thing of like,
yeah, what do you do with
grandma's
it?
on the mantle.
Right.
Yeah, we would encourage families to have a final resting place.
Yes.
You see these things on the news every once in a while where somebody will buy a car or they'll move into a home and they'll find something in the trunk of the car or in a closet,
right,
and they'll
right.
go, oh my gosh, I don't know what this is, and they open it up and it ends up being
Grandpa.
someone's loved one.
Yeah.
And so that's worst case scenario. We certainly
Sure.
don't want that to have, to be part of, that experience for families. So ultimately having a final resting place is really important.
Now, this sounds like, again, we're going to be talking about some rather bold things here concerning the topic here of funerals, cremation. What kind of choices are there? I mean, you always see like an urn. Is that the only choice?
No. You want to?
No,
yeah.
and what we encourage families to do is to still have that visitation, usually 2 to 4 and 6 to 8 in the evening, for family and friends to remember.
Even if you've been cremated?
Even if
Okay.
the body is going to be cremated after the
Okay.
service. In many cases, there will still be a funeral mass or a funeral service at the funeral home, and then placement of the cremated body in a final resting place, like either buried in the ground or a cremation niche, whether it be granite front or glass front. And the nice thing about Catholic cemetery is we have numerous options for the cremation customer, not just one or two, all at different price points so you can select exactly what you want for what you can afford. But what we see, and I think Nate alluded to this a little bit too, is that cremation just follows the typical service because that's what that person wants. They don't want full body burial in a cemetery, but they want a cremation, smaller niche. Still, the family can come and visit the cemetery for the birthdays, the anniversaries, Christmas, the holidays. And so it's simply a place to remember.
I get that. Nate, in our conversation before the show started, you've been in this business now several decades.
Almost 35 years.
That's
yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, it is. Makes me old.
No, not at all. That's not what I was inferring. What are changes you have seen? What are the most significant changes?
To your point, I think cremation is the biggest change that we've seen. When I first started in the funeral business, cremation or direct cremation was very rare, maybe less than 10 or 5% of the families. And now cremation is probably close to 50% of
really?
what people
That
choose.
high?
Yeah, but typically, and most families would choose to, as Casey said, have what would look like a traditional funeral service. The only thing that would be different would be cremation instead of going full body into the ground for burial. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people might be a little bit confused about or maybe uncertain about, is that when you are cremated, you can still have everything else. And that's one of the things that a lot of times when I meet with families, they don't realize that. But yeah, you can have everything is just like it was going to be ground burial.
You could still have like the music,
yes,
a certain sermon or talk by your choice.
Yep, and if they want to go to the church with the full body, it's everything is the same exact thing.
So is it typical, Casey, that somebody might choose to have a full body and do a service, then get cremated the next day?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the whole thing about the visitation is it begins the process of healing. That's what the funeral service is all about. Life is going to be different for the survivors after that.
Sure.
When I pass away, things are going to be different for my 2 kids, my friends, my wife. So there's going to be a change, but that funeral process begins the healing process so that they can grieve and attend that visitation and receive friends and feel the love that is exuded to that family because of the death that they encountered.
We looked at some photographs a little bit ago, but we also have a brief video we'd like to share with you as well. And Casey, if there's anything you'd like to describe as we're looking at this video, please do.
Well, this is the original Divine Mercy Funeral Home, which was constructed, actually opened November 2nd, 2017, and this is the construction of our new Divine Mercy Funeral Home at Cedar Canyon and Lima Road. The first facility has been so well received by the Fort Wayne community, and not just Catholics, it's non-Catholics alike.
Okay.
So that we have found it necessary to construct the second funeral home, which is going to open in November of this year, just in a few months.
So it's, we just say non-denominational?
Non-denominational, absolutely,
okay.
Yes. Divine Mercy will help anybody in need.
Okay. All right, good to know. Okay, let's go back to you, Nate. You're the pre-planner here. Let's go through, if you will, the choices people have to make when they come in to see you. Do they have to have all these choices made before they come? Is it one meeting? Or if they say, gee, I don't know, I want to go home and talk to somebody about it?
Yeah, it can be multiple. Typically when a family comes in, they are looking for guidance. I mean, they may have some construct of what they think the arrangements for them might look like, but they really do rely on, you know, the advisor to get like the specifics and just maybe reaffirm some things in their minds. Like if they think they want to have, you know, like I have a lot of families that want to know from A to Z, when I pass away, what happens, you know, here, and here. And so a lot of it is educating the families on what that process looks like. They'll be asked, you know, to come into the funeral home for, you know, finalizing all the arrangements and then what that looks like. And then a lot of times it's just getting ideas for cost. You know, they want to process, you know, and that's the beauty of the pre-planning process is you don't have to make any decisions that day. Yeah. You can come in and get all the information that you're looking for, and you have time to process it. And if there are doubts on your end about, or maybe some things that you just really weren't certain about if you wanted or not, you have a chance to go home and talk about them, talk to your kids if you want to. And then, but I will say most of the time your kids are going to say one of two things: Mom or Dad, I don't want to talk about it, or you're never going to die, so I'm not going to worry about it. You know, so it's that.
I hear that so often, Nate. It's not the older person, the parent or the grandparent, that is hesitant to talk about their mortality.
Yeah.
It's the younger kids that's like, I don't want to talk about that. You know, we can talk about that next decade or 10 years from now. Or why do you think that is? What's your experience?
I think it's a protective thing. You know, for the kids, they're trying to tell the mom and dad, hey, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it, because we don't want you to have to worry about it. But the reality of that is none of us have been promised tomorrow. So your children haven't either. So it's really important to have those things talked about if they can, and if they're unwilling to talk about, families come in, and this happens a lot too, where they come in and make the arrangement and they go tell the kids.
But you know, Nate, what I see in reality is after somebody has made the pre-arrangement and that person passes away and they need our help, overwhelmingly the kids will say, I'm so glad Dad did this.
Yep.
He made the selections. He selected exactly what he wanted. We didn't have to do it. I had no idea Dad would want that song played. Yeah. That kind of thing. So we see that overwhelmingly. And so it's a gift of the family. It truly is when you come in and you do that. And again, the individuals that are at Divine Mercy that help these families make the process so easy. I think everybody needs to know that. It's not all doom and gloom. It's usually a cheerful conversation based on what you want. A celebration of life, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I hear what you're saying too about the relief that it gives, you know, twofold or threefold even, but you know, two of the major reasons for pre-planning might be, again, it relieves your kids of having to make the choices right away. That first week after you pass away, you know, they're in shock perhaps. Or they're grieving, and they don't want to talk about flowers and, you know, music and stuff like that. I mean, they're dealing with their own stuff and making contacts with relatives and whatever. And secondly, I would say it takes them off the hook, if you will. If somebody criticizes something that happened at the funeral, they can say, that's what Dad wanted. We followed his directions.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that comes into play especially more today with blended families. So if there's a husband and wife that have already had children from other marriages, to your point, it relieves the finger pointing. Well, you know, when someone passes away, they can easily just say, well, those were his or her decisions.
Sure.
You know, no one was coercing them into doing something they didn't want to do. And so it separates the, you know, the families to an extent where, to your point, there's no finger pointing anymore. It's those were his or her decisions.
Right, right. And I hear that a lot when we have legal shows here on Life Ahead, which we do often, and we're talking about estate planning or you know, if somebody has to go into a care facility of some sort, and the kids are maybe experiencing guilt over what they're choosing for their parents, and if their parents decided beforehand, and that seems to be a new trend now, that the older generation will go and visit different nursing facilities or rehab centers, and then they can tell their kids, okay, here's where I want you to put me, if you will. I know that sounds terrible, but again, then it becomes their choice.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask you this, Casey. You've been in the funeral planning business for a long time as well. What is the job of the funeral home, no matter what type of service?
Okay, the job of the funeral home, and there's several aspects. I'm not going to be able to cover it all in this short meeting. But initially is to place the loved one into our care.
Okay.
And then within a very short period of time after that, we'll meet with the family. And if it's been prearranged, like we would hope it had been, everything's in writing. It makes our job so much easier because we know exactly what the family wants.
Yeah.
But if there is a case where there has not been a prearrangement, then it's time to meet with the next of kin, usually the surviving spouse, the children, and sit down and make those selections at that time. And we have a wonderful group of funeral directors that do just that, make it as painless as possible. And then we carry out the wishes exactly of that family. If they want to have visitation 2 to 4, 6 to 8, we'll arrange for that. Next day, the Mass will be at St. Jude's Catholic Church. We'll arrange everything with the priest or any other clergy that's involved.
So the family doesn't have to deal with that.
Fill out all
Great.
the necessary legal requirements for when a death occurs with the Board of Health, things like that. We'll post the obituary with the Fort Wayne newspapers. Just take care of a whole myriad of details for the family so they don't have to do it. Again, the funeral director is that bridge so that that family can begin to grieve and go through the steps of grief recovery, which is very, very important, so that the family doesn't have to worry about those details. So in a nutshell, that's basically it. And then, of course, arrange for burial. We think that's very important as well.
Okay, Nate, in kind of continuing this topic, if you will, in the pre-planning stage, do people at that point have to have like their obituary written in advance, or what do they need to tell you?
We gather all the statistical and biographical information that the family's going to need to construct most of that information. So, but there are a lot of families who will pre-write their obituaries and want them to have them in their file, and that's a really nice gift too. So the families have a really good outline, and there may be a grandchild or a great-grandchild or something else that might need to be added. But you know, yeah, people take it. They can take it as far as they want, as far as the planning part of it goes.
You mentioned, Casey, that the funeral home would take care of notifying the newspaper, and have it put in the newspaper. And again, that's the family's choice of whether they want 3 lines about Grandpa or
that's correct.
5 inches.
There is a charge per line for the obituary, but the Fort Wayne newspapers will place a very, very small, inexpensive funeral notice in the newspaper on the obituary page, just basically stating the name and then the name of the funeral, the name of the decedent and the name of the funeral. So you can go on our website and take a look at the full obituary. There's no charge for.
Okay, that makes good sense. Okay, we have a quick phone call here from Jean. She said, how soon can a cremation happen before a memorial service? Dave, do you want to answer that one? Quickly, we only have a minute.
It has to be a minimum of 48 hours, but ultimately it's dictated on when we get the signed death certificate back from the doctor, and it will always, you know, typically it's going to be longer than 48 hours. So
I see.
Depending on where someone passes away or what the cause of death, But we can't do much until we get the death certificate back from the doctor, but it has to be a minimum of 48 hours.
Okay.
And I'd like to add to that, at Divine Mercy, we have our own crematory, so your loved one never leaves our care. And so it gives
you
us
aren't sending them
an
somewhere.
awful lot of flexibility and more
Got it.
control over scheduling the cremation for the family. So that if they want to have a memorial service on such and such a date, we can arrange for that.
Oh, you've taught us a lot here just in this last half hour. Casey, Nate, thank you so much for
You're
educating
welcome.
our viewers here. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that there's even more we could talk about at another time to expand on this topic. Meanwhile, we appreciate our guests here tonight. We appreciate you as well for watching us here on Life Ahead, and I'll see you next Wednesday night right here at 7:30. Good night.
The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
Divine Mercy Funeral Home, a locally owned nonprofit funeral home, is expanding to Huntertown this fall, serving all faiths with funeral and cremation services. Information at divinemercyfuneralhome.com.